Okay. Hi, Gay. How are you today?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate to be here.
Yeah, nice to see you. And it was so great to meet you. I had seen you on LinkedIn live stream one of your learning sessions, and I sat in, I believe it was a merchandising one, and I was so impressed and so excited to connect with you after I saw that. And I knew you were someone I had to reach out to. And then we got to meet in person in New York during New York Fashion Week. You spoke at the Digital Fashion Week. Is that what
hmm
it's called? Yeah, yep. So it was great to meet you in person, and we've been able to connect further. And now I'm really excited to collaborate with you, bringing your expertise and your knowledge and your website together with Inside Fashion Design, where we can offer, these types of educational master classes and design, processes, everything involved. As you know, it's like a huge, huge
Yes,
undertaking.
it is a huge undertaking. Absolutely.
Yeah, and as a creative, I know I'm good and confident on the creative side, but it's some of the business fundamentals and those things that maybe the creative doesn't necessarily think about. And you have such a proven track record on how to make product that sells and not overproducing and wasting money and building that solid foundation first. So I'm really excited to have you on board. You're going to be teaching a 12 session masterclass, we'll call it, which will take place starting in November. And so each month will be a different topic and session, and we can talk about those details in a minute. But I'd love to start with just you sharing your design journey, your background. I don't know where you were educated. So yeah, how did you start working in the design industry to begin with?
Well, to begin with, I always say I'm a walking example of that dreams do come true.
Mhm.
I've been wanting to be a fashion designer since I was 4 years old. And I worked towards it all my childhood and as well as later on in my career. I'm a graduate of FITM. And I end up being growing within a head design positions fairly quickly. And I started working with the private companies, private brands, helping them grow, building their assortments, building their designs. But what I've learned really quickly is, especially working for a smaller private brands, is that you tend to wear multiple hats.
Yeah.
And I got to be exposed to production, to processes, to operations, pattern making, sample making, you name it all. And I have learned fairly quickly that a lot of times design and creativity is not enough. And
Mhm.
what really is important is number one, obviously, to have good, strong processes and making sure that everything works seamlessly and that you are able to deliver it agile and on a lean budget. But most importantly, what I've also learned really quickly is that there are quite a bit of opportunities in areas of profit leaks. And
Mm.
often we focus so hyper focus on our product margins that we tend to not see what happens on the bottom line. And so our goal is to really think about how do we optimize our profitability at the bottom line. And it's not always means we need to have more sales. Often it means we might not even need to have more sales. What we really need to do is to optimize from the end-to-end process and everything how we approach from the concept to design to manufacturing and to even shipping and fulfilling to our customers and supply chain. So that really got me intrigued. And meanwhile, as I kind of climbed that ladder, I end up working on both sides of the table. I worked on
Mm.
the manufacturing side for quite a few years, about 10 years. Then I ventured out and had my own brand and learned a lot of things in a way where it really means to do it on a lean budget.
Mhm.
Because it's not the same going from a big budgets companies who already are set and you have the budget for marketing, you have the budget to hire people and do what you need to do
Mhm.
versus going into a self-starter, self-funded
Yeah.
startup.
Solopreneur.
Completely, totally different set of strategies, set of ways to approach your thinking and how you are actually building the business. And
Mhm.
of course, like everybody else, I first jumped right into it, knowing, thinking that I know it all. I mean, I've done it for 10 years successfully, and I thought it was, I have all the answers.
Hmm.
But quickly, about a year and a half later, I'm not ashamed to say it, I looked back and, thousands and thousands of dollars spent and no sales yet. And yet, what I've realized is that applying the same strategies that worked for me at the bigger companies and with the bigger budgets is not ever going to work when you are doing it in a small scale.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that what really prompted me to really step back and build the what I call Yay method. And I've tested it on myself. 4 years later, sold the business with positive ROI.
Excellent.
At the same time, helped us to really open up the opportunity where I have seen that there's lots of gaps in education and resources to be able to really focus on how to build a profitable business in fashion and retail.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, I've sat on both sides, so ever since I've been doing consulting, and I was lucky and fortunate to work with large retailers to build their private label brands. I've built over 12 private labeled brands that are multi-million dollars for multi-billion dollar retailers. Majority of them were in the collegiate space, but as well as in apparel, women's apparel space as well. And what I really end up enjoying, and that's really my specialty, is how do we build the brand from ground up? And when we get hired by retailers to bring and build their private label brands, it's kind of starting a business from scratch.
Hmm.
Because it's a completely new division, completely new different sets of skills and processes and supply chain that retailers don't have the foundation necessarily unless they're already doing some sort of manufacturing. And this is where my manufacturing skills and all the learnings that I have gained for over a decade at that time is really helped me to build and the momentum and continue testing my theories and learning from others in the industry who are gurus at what they do. And I tend to go really deep and dive, learning from not just on the surface of how it's made on the bigger picture, but granularly down to the actual process users, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a black belt Lean Six Sigma as well certified. So because I do see the big need of integrating processes and optimization and supply chain transformations in order for us to be able to show higher profitability on the bottom line.
Yeah. That's amazing. And you don't necessarily learn all those things well, you can't learn them in school. You have to learn them in real life. And it's
Correct.
amazing that you had the opportunity to wear so many hats because that's a little unusual
It
as
is.
well. A lot of, especially at a bigger company, it's very easy to get siloed into this is your role. You're a colorist or whatever that may be, and you're a pattern maker, and that's what you do, like day in and day out. And almost not that those folks are oblivious, but you don't understand the full, maybe what somebody else is doing in their role and how it's all connected. And so to learn that through real life experiences like you've had is fantastic. And you've been able to shape that into this special, unique offering that you can provide. And I wish I had known all those things. I did have my own line for about 4 years. And I was completely blind to the financing. And I mean, I knew like the cost of my fabric because I was before sales, I'm buying fabric, I'm shipping in things, I'm going to the factory to pay for garments and samples. And I exhibited at trade shows and was starting to take orders. I had no clue. Like they're asking me delivery dates and my margin. And I was just scrambling, like really, by the seat of my pants, trying to figure all those things out on the go. And I made it, I did make it. I did deliveries. I achieved all those things. But then there was a lot of mistakes and I had, fabric that was $20,000 I had to pay up front to get it into the factory, without having all the sales. And then I'd get stuck for a while and cash flow, like all those things I just was learning on the fly. And if I had
Right.
known the proper ways to do that up front, it would have made a big difference. But it was a great learning experience for me, and I'm very happy that I did go through it because I know you learn from your mistakes and you figure
Absolutely.
out, what works and what doesn't. And having experience of wearing all those hats, going to the factory, selling, talking to buyers, costing, all of those things. Are all skills you need, whether you're doing that in your particular role or not. to have the awareness of maybe it is a product developer or the merchandiser that's planning those things within your company. But if you understand what their role entails and challenges and how it all connects together, I mean, the better, if you're a designer, the better designer you'll be because you have all that
Absolutely.
awareness. So that's why I love, what you can bring is all of it into a holistic, complete
All right.
process. And like you said, having those processes, if you build that as your foundation, you're going to be that much more successful and your chances of success are much higher. And like you said, maybe your product price stays the same, but if you know the things underneath it that you can tweak and have a better process for more efficiencies, your margin can be better, even though you're not having to raise your price and things like that. So thank you for sharing all of your background and your knowledge from your experiences that you'll apply to folks that join us here through your 12 session um, masterclass that's going to come up. So you now obviously have your own business.
Yes.
And you mentioned a little bit of who you work with, but who are the main people you serve like today with your consultancy?
Yeah, so we're a boutique consulting business. So we focus on quality versus quantity. So
Mm,
we do work with only one large client at a time. And we also have emerging brands that we coach throughout the year as well. And we have about a dozen of them right now that in our portfolio that we're working currently with. And so our goal is really to focus. We have two programs, two paths to work with us. One is the coaching side, where it's usually really designed for emerging brands or
mm,
brands who already started and kind of already in that 3-year mode, and yet they are still not generating the sales that they were hoping that they would have.
okay.
We often able to see and help them to kind of take a step back and show them the steps that they have missed, and be able to work them through so that they can get to profitability and sales, by year 5. I always
Yeah.
say break even by year 3, but start making money by year 5. And
Yeah.
don't
I
ever
always hear
start.
that everyone in my world always says if you can survive for 5 years, you start a business and you get to 5 years, you're past that point of you're either going to fail or succeed. So if you can get it to five
If
years,
only if you started with your 5-year business model that was
yes,
profitable on paper.
yes, do
Which is
that.
often, people miss that as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, some of us, it's like, do we even have a plan? Or are we just winging it?
right,
I've got a beautiful collection I just sewed, but do I have a plan? Maybe there's not even a solid plan in
correct,
place. So,
correct. And then, on the consulting side, we work with more of a mid-sized to large scale retailers, as well as manufacturing brands to help them build their private label divisions, help them to really optimize their processes, transform their supply chains, and go with the end goal is to maximize their bottom line profitability. What makes us really different from the industry, other consultants, is that we do take a holistic approach. There's no one template that fits everybody.
hmm
And we look at really under the hood. So we do kind of forcefully all of us to take a step back and pause for a second,
hmm
because we often tend to treat the symptoms, but we never really have time to sit down and find the root causes of
yeah,
why we are bleeding money here and there, or why it's not working, or why we're not selling, or what is it that we need to do in order for us to be able to come out in a profitable way, and as well as on a lean budget. Because even for large retailers, lean budget is necessary when we are starting up, especially this kind of new divisions and new initiatives. And that's where the our expertise really comes in. We follow, and whether you're on a coaching side or whether we are on a consulting side, we do follow our method. And it is a 12-phase method where we are making sure that each consecutive step is taken after the other one is complete. And there is a logic to this madness, is because you often been able to preserve your funding and you're able to save money that way by actually making the right decisions based on the and base your strategies on the findings that you found, and you know in the previous phases. And
Mhm.
that's where it's really becomes why this model is so successful, that you do it in phases and micro moments where you're actually phasing in approach, to be able to optimize and scale up.
Yeah. So you're going to go through these 12 phases over 12 months, which may sound like a long time for some people, but with each session, they have to go and do the work.
Correct.
So what you're going to cover is the overview of those each of those phases with suggestions and um, educating, I guess, on what you would do in each of those phases. And so attendees that do join this course will kind of have homework and they're going to have to go and do their research. So focusing on that one session per month is such a great way to build that solid foundation rather than trying to, cram in a whole plan within a month or 2 months or something. And this is slow fashion, so I also feel like you probably be in such a hurry and you can coincide some of your processes if you're already in development or something, throughout the year. But to take each month and each session as a time and evaluate where you're at, whether you need to pause, like you said, and kind of restructure things or build in a new process, or yeah, if you're already there, you're kind of okay on that in that phase, perhaps. So could you talk a little bit more? We have maybe just about 5 minutes for some of the 12 phases that you'll cover. And, it's obviously it's in a sequence of how you would do the process. So, yeah, can you give us an overview of what you'll cover in
Yeah,
them?
absolutely. And so, with the 12 phases, it starts from obviously the idea phase. And so, if you are already kind of have started your business and you're already probably into that kind of beginning mode, or and you've passed and you think that you have your solid idea, it's still going to be important phase to attend, because we often think that we have formulated the idea and we jumped right into it. But what we've learned really quickly is that, especially on us creatives, we tend to focus on the fun stuff.
Mhm.
Focus on creating. We have a great idea of a product. We jump into product development
We
and
have a
design. Right.
beautiful inspiration wall.
Beautiful inspiration wall, and then we build great websites, and then we
Yep.
hope it's going to sell.
Yep.
And so it's important to kind of even to be valuable to listen, even starting from the idea phase, to what it really takes to formulate the idea, whether it's a new collection that you're working on or potentially a new product you're introducing to your existing line, or if you are truly a starting brand from scratch. We've then focused on the planning phase that derives from the idea phase, and it's really about validation of everything that you have assumed, and it goes in very methodical steps. At the end of the planning phase, the goal is to come up with a profitable model on paper, because like I said, if it's not profitable on paper by the end of planning phase, there is no point to move forward.
Mhm.
But it doesn't mean that you have to completely walk away from it. What it means, you probably have to pivot and maybe go through multiple iterations of idea to planning until you get to that profitable model.
Yeah.
That's backed up with data, right? Because everything has to be backed up with data. Then from there, we're going to start talking about supply chain, and notice that, yes, we start talking about supply chain before we're starting to design. And that's very critical. There's a madness to that reason, which I'll explain during that phase.
Mhm.
And then we go from there, we're going to go into design and product development phases. And only then we're going to also talk about branding. And that, though, obviously, the design and the branding pieces are kind of go together. But notice how I've also mentioned that the branding doesn't start at the idea phase. The branding actually comes and arrives after certain phases already complete, because you
Mhm.
actually going to learn so much more within those first few phases that you might actually be pivoting, and it will influence how your branding will actually look,
Yeah.
so that can connect to the customer. Then we will be talking about how do we market? How do we prepare for market to actually get your product onto the into sales? And we're going to talk about different opportunities of sale channels. Whether you do it wholesale, whether you do it direct to consumer, and what are the different options within those. And then from there, that's what the path starts to kind of split up a little bit, and it becomes a little different, whether you choose the path of direct to consumer, whether you choose the path of wholesale. And we'll talk a little bit about both, and what the differences are and what the plus and minuses are. We'll lead up to then the soft launch, and the validations of your fulfillment, of your logistics, of your customer service. And then, of course, we're going to finish with the last phase, which is the launch. And again, it does not necessarily have to be a launch of a complete new brand. If you are already existing in business,
Mhm.
it could be potentially launching your new collection, or your next season, or your next product idea, or your next category. So
Yeah.
what we're going to learn, it's very applicable and relatable, not just to someone who wants to start from scratch. It is also relatable to someone who's already currently in business.
Yeah, you could have that one new item and do this process with that one item, and then you'd have a really nice comparison to how you
Right.
did it this way to the previous way and see the difference. And so that's what I find super exciting is so we serve, you know, early graduates that have this dream of owning their own, starting their own clothing line. And there's a lot of emerging designers that we're, see and work with that, like you said, they're creatives and they have the fun part and they maybe have this incredible sewing talent and make these beautiful garments, but maybe missing the fundamental business side of things. So this is an opportunity for that creative to get this, or maybe it's even for a team that, there's different roles and those would apply to maybe a specific role that somebody's working
Correct.
on. So I love that this is, like you said, applicable to anyone that's involved and touches product in the design and going to production phase. So I'm really excited to start. We're launching November 20th will be our first idea is your first session. And I want to point out that these will be live with you. I will be there. So when people join in and come to participate, they have direct contact with you. There will be roundtable discussion, Q&A, to go along with, what you're providing each month. So it's a great opportunity for people just to learn from you and your vast experience and be able to participate. And so we welcome people to join in. It will be through the Inside Fashion Design Community platform. So I will link all of that information. And I look forward to welcoming you and working with you on this every month. And any last thoughts? And before we go today, I can't tell you how happy I am to have met you in person and to be collaborating on this because I know what you bring is so holistic and so full circle of a lot of those things that have been missing pieces
Correct.
for us and a lot of design folks. So,
I think what also I would just want to add that where uniqueness is what we bring to the table is really also my other side of working on the retail and leading
mm,
merchandising and buying teams. So especially when we get to the sales portion of the phases, we're going to start talking about more from what are the best practices and what are the buyers are actually looking for and what do
oh,
they want to hear when you are actually presenting your product because we also
excellent.
see a huge pitfalls there where people
Yeah.
it's one pitch where the buyers are overwhelmed and they see this and they hear the same pitch over and over again and
Yeah.
then wonder why they don't want to respond to you, why they don't want to take a risk on you and test it. So
Yeah.
there's also a process to that as well, and you have to be ready for that process. So I'm excited to also bring that to the table and share, and that's where my retail side comes through, right? So this is why I said I come from both sides, and it's great because then I really able to give the information to the buying people who are actually in the retail. What is it like to work with the vendors and what it's like to be in the
Both
manufacturing space?
sides.
They're doing the private label piece. And at
Yeah.
the same time, for emerging designers or brands, manufacturing brands who are trying to get their product into stores.
Yeah. And they might be doing that themselves. It
Correct.
might be they're the solopreneur, they're their own designer, and they have to be the salesperson also. So that's huge. That's
Yeah.
huge. Because, yeah, how do you even get an appointment with a buyer that's approached, 50 emails a day? Can I
Yes.
get an appointment?
Hundreds.
Hundreds. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So this is going to be fantastic. Thank you for joining today, and we will see you on the first session, November 20th. And if you're watching this past November 20th,